Hi, my name is Isabella Pack, and this is my reflection on Their Eyes Are Watching God. In this video, I will be discussing three things. First, I will be discussing the writing style of the book. Secondly, I'll be talking about Janie's character and the metaphors between mules and Janie that are present throughout the novel. To start off, my initial thoughts about the writing style were very negative. I had a really hard time understanding the dialogue because it's written like it would be spoken rather than how it would be read. But the more I read on, the more I started to understand the cultural importance of having dialogue written that way. I feel like it brings you into the environment at which the book is taking place a lot more than it could if it were written as dialogue is normally written. I could definitely sense more emotion in the characters reading the dialogue this way. I know when Tea Cake was dying and she was like sobbing over his body, or when Joe was dying and they were arguing, I could definitely feel what was happening, almost like I was watching it rather than I was reading it, which I feel like is very important to understand the message that Hurston is trying to get across. And that kind of brings me into Janie's character, because going into the novel, I really wanted her to be this like strong feminist protagonist that I'm kind of used to reading, but she really wasn't that, because she was hopping between marriages and she was kind of always trapped, not being able to voice her opinion in the first half of the novel, which was really frustrating to read as a modern day feminist. But by the end of the novel, I realized that is what gives her strength, because understanding the time in which this book is taking place as a colored woman, she doesn't have the luxury of being so radical that white women had, like Joe from Little Women. I think her big feminist moment is when she finally runs off with Tea Cake despite everyone telling her not to, and that she was going to regret it, but she chose her own happiness and she chose love rather than stability. I think that is the best way for a woman of the time to be her own woman. She had more money than Tea Cake, so it was all for love. She had done everything else. I mean, Tea Cake even said she spent her young life working and her old life having fun. That's where I found Janie's strength. And that's kind of like a recurring theme I see through Janie's character, is this like search for happiness. And finally at the end of the book where she says, here was peace. She pulled in her horizon like a great fishnet, pulled it in around her waist of the world and draped it over her shoulder. That really spoke to me, because this entire time she's been so unhappy and felt so trapped, but she ends her life being peaceful, being happy. And that trapped theme throughout the novel kind of brings me into my next point with the comparison between mules in the novel and Janie as a character, because with her first husband, he was saying that he needed another mule so Janie could work with him. A creature that was made for work in his mind is both the mule and Janie. And then she runs away with Joe, and he can see that she is visibly upset by the mule being trapped, so he frees the mule. But he doesn't see that he is also trapping Janie. And then when the mule dies, there's a personification of the buzzards that are eating the mule. And when I read that, it felt very powerful, because it was in the same way the men of the community tear apart Janie, just as these buzzards are tearing apart this mule. And it also shows the way white people are tearing apart Black people in this society. So I think the personifications of the buzzards as it relates to the mule and Janie is in the way that toxic masculinity and racism can be expressed in the novel very clearly. Ultimately, I went into this novel thinking I wasn't gonna like it, but by the end of it, I was so deep into this world and was very sad when it ended. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts about the novel. Thank you for listening.